So the first thing I do is look at the pattern and make a note of any additional pattern pieces that I need to create. In this case, you can see the strap pieces that are 5 by 4 inches, as well as the zipper pocket. So those are not included in the printed pattern pieces. So I've written those down. The other thing I will look for are drawings that I can add to the pattern pieces. So I can definitely add this zipper information here that'll draw so that I don't have to keep measuring it. I've created some templates for processing PDF files to cut on different sized machines. Open up the template for the type of machine you have. Click the Open button. Navigate to the location of your files and then click to select the machine that you want to prepare this file for. In this case, I'm going to select Cricut and click the Open button. Now let's save this as the file for the bag we're going to process. So go to the File menu and select Save As. Navigate to the location that you want to save it and then change the file name to the bag name. When you're finished, click the Save button. When the Illustrator Options window appears, just click OK. Now it's time to open the PDF. So go to the File menu and select Open. Navigate to and select the PDF file. Then click the Open button. Some of the designers will put all of the pattern pieces in one file, and it may be tempting to click this All button to import them. Don't do it. You will not be able to edit the vectors if you do that. So click Range, and because this designer included the written documentation and the pattern pieces in the same file, we're going to click the Go to End button and then back up one page at a time until we find out where the pattern pieces stop. Okay, so let's go forward one. So we want to open up pages 14 through 16. So with the range selected, enter 14 hyphen 16. Make sure that the option to link to the pages is not checked and click OK. Now it's saying that I don't have the fonts, so we're going to replace those. So click the Replace Fonts button. Then you can select what type of fonts. I usually select System Fonts, and then I just pick a very plain looking font. So I'm going to pick Arial, but you can scroll through and pick a different font if you want. Once you have the font selected, you're going to click and select Change All, and then Done. So to zoom out, I'm using Control minus. Now the first thing we want to do is, if we take a look at this and we click on a line, you can see that there's this box around it, and I really don't have access to clicking and changing or modifying any of the vectors. So not all PDFs are created with the same software, and they're all going to be just a little different. But generally you're going to need to remove the clipping mask. Click and drag to select all of the pattern pieces. Then go to the Object menu and select Clipping Mask, and then Release. Now you can notice there's a keyboard shortcut here, Alt-Control-7. If you like keyboard shortcuts, you're going to remember that. Now you can go back to the Object menu, go back down to Clipping Mask, and you can see that it's still available. It means that there's still more clipping masks that we need to undo. So we'll go back, and this time it's not available, which means that all of the clipping masks are released. Okay, with that done, Grouping is another thing that happens when PDFs are created. So if we click to select this, you can see that there are other items selected. So we need to ungroup everything that's grouped. So go to the Object menu and select Ungroup. If you go back, you can see if there's any additional groups. Once it's grayed out, we know we have them all. So we're going to have to do that with this one and this one. Okay, now we should be able to click to select all of these extra boxes and delete them without deleting our pattern pieces. Oh, I see another one. What we need to do is take a look at the pattern pieces and how they're created and what we need to do to make them output on your cutting system. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to select this. Oh, I want to make sure I get just that. So let me zoom in. The selection tool has two modes. One selects everything and one selects objects. So direct select, we could click and select either nodes or lines, but it doesn't select everything connected. The selection tool selects everything, so we can see that it gets all of the line and all of the nodes. Okay, let's get to that after. I'm going to process this square, so I'll duplicate that one. I don't like working harder than I have to, so I'm going to delete that and this. There's a couple of features that we need to have turned on in order to process these pattern pieces. So let's go to the View menu, turn on Smart Guides, go back to the View menu, and turn on Snap to Point. There's also a couple of panels that we're going to use. Now I have mine mounted to the right-hand side. So if I click on this icon, my Path Finder opens, and this is available in the Windows menu. So if yours is not open, you're going to go to the Windows panel and select Pathfinder. You'll also want to select Swatches and Document Info. So let's just do Document Info. There we go. Now I have mine mounted here, so I can just click and turn it off and on as I need it. If we click, we can see that these lines are not connected. And what can happen when you're cutting it on your machine is that it could cut this line, then it could decide to come down and cut this line, and then it's jumping all over the place. So we really want to have all of the outside border connected. The easiest way to do that is to select the pattern pieces that you're not going to work on and hide them by going to the Object menu and selecting Hide. Then select Selection. Now notice the keyboard shortcut is Control-3, and that's what I'm going to use in the future. Click to select any one of these lines that represent the outer border. Go to the Select menu, select Same, and then Fill and Stroke. And what that does is it selects all of the lines that look the same. Now if it had selected this one, I would deselect it by holding down the Shift key, Alt key, and clicking on it. Okay, but it didn't, so I don't have to worry about it. Now I want to join these all together by going to the Object menu, selecting Path, and then Join. And notice the keyboard shortcut is Control-J. Now, in the Document Info, mine is set to Objects, but when you first open it up, it's actually going to be set to Document, and that is not going to really help us with this project. So go to the menu and select Objects. Now we have some information we can work with. We have 0 open paths selected, and we have 1 closed path. That's good information. That means we did this successfully. Okay, once that's done, we want to show all of the pattern pieces. So go up to the Object menu and select Show All. And notice the keyboard shortcut is Alt-Control-3. Let's work on this pattern piece. So select this one hold down the Shift key and click and drag to draw a box around the other pattern piece. And we're going to hide these by using the keyboard shortcut, Control 3. We're going to select part of this pattern. We're going to go to the Select menu, select Same, and then Fill and Stroke. We're going to use the keyboard shortcut, Control J, to join those together. If we look up to the document info, we can see we have 1 open and 0 closed. I'm going to hit Control J again, and now I can see I have 0 open and 1 closed. So that is done correctly. I'm going to show all of the pattern pieces by using the keyboard shortcut, Control Alt 3. And now I want to work on this one, so I'm going to hide these two. So with those two selected, Control 3 to hide them. Click to select any one of the lines that represent the outside. Go to the Select menu, select Same, Fill and Stroke. Now we're going to use that same keyboard shortcut, Control J, to join these together. I use Control J twice and I can see that I have 0 open and 1 closed object selected. Now let's show all the pattern pieces. So I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut, Control Alt 3. I want to change the stroke weight on all of these vectors. I have the direct select tool active most of the time. If I click on a shape, I can't see the stroke thickness. I need to have all of the vectors selected to be able to see that. Now, instead of going back and forth and selecting these tools, I can simply hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, click and drag, and it selects all of the nodes. So now I have the stroke weight available. I'm going to enter half a point and hit the Enter key on the keyboard. And I'm going to repeat that for this. I noticed something a little interesting going on in the lower left corner of Pocket C. So with the Z key held down, it opens the zoom tool. I'm just going to click and drag to zoom in on that area. And you can see that this goes back, kind of doubles back. Now the machine will cut it, but it's not the best practice. So I need to edit the vector in order to fix this. I need to select all of the vectors. So hold down the Alt key, then click and drag, or Alt key and click, does the same thing. And I'm going to make a copy of these vectors. And you can either do that by going to the Edit menu and selecting Copy, or using the keyboard shortcut Control C. And now I want to paste that in front. So if I go to the Edit menu, I can either select Paste in Front, or use the keyboard shortcut Control F. I want to change the top one to be a guide. So go to the View menu, select Guides, and then Make Guide. Now I can simply click on one of those nodes and drag it in. And it's fixed, and I know because of that guide, I didn't alter my pattern. It's time to bring these into the other document and continue working with them. So draw a marquee box around all of the objects and copy them by going to the Edit menu and selecting Copy. Click to activate our pattern file, and then paste them in this document by going to the Edit menu and selecting Paste. I have a little more work to do, so I'm going to bring them down here and zoom in on these objects. So I'm going to hold the Z key down and click and drag. Now, if you want to reposition them on the screen, hold down the space bar, and you can see that hand icon. You can click and drag and move them. Let's take a look at the pattern pieces. And this is where I'm going to make some decisions. Am I going to rotate it? So I can see that this is 6 inches wide, which means on the Cricut, my maximum cut area is 11.5, which means I'm not going to be able to do, like, even though I need 2 of these, I'm not going to be able to do this because they won't fit on my mat, right? So what I'm going to do is select this and rotate it so I don't have to keep rotating it for the linings and the fusible fleece. So with that selected, I'm going to come over to the tool panel, and you're going to either see the reflect tool or the rotate tool active. Those are the two tools that you have active. So if you notice, any tool that has that little triangle in the lower right corner has other options. So with that selected, I'm going to click, hold down the Shift key, and drag until it is positioned horizontally. Once that's done, I'm just going to move it over. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this one, because I know if this one didn't fit too going widthwise, I'm sure not going to be able to fit it with this one. So I'm going to click and drag to select. Now there's a shortcut. Instead of just coming over here and hitting rotate all the time, I can press the R key on the keyboard, hold down the Shift key, click and drag. Okay, so let's move over. And this one is a little more interesting because this pattern piece is set up to cut on the fold. So I will click to select the fold text and delete it by hitting the delete key. Select all of the objects that we need to create the other half of this pattern. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and click and drag. And you can see that this draw object, as well as the part border, is all selected. Position the cursor over a node, hold down the Alt key, which will duplicate, hold down the Shift key, which will keep it lined horizontally. And when you clear the other pattern piece, release the mouse, release the keyboard shortcuts. We need to flip this horizontally. So if you go over to the rotate tool and click and hold down, you can select the reflect tool. Now the keyboard shortcut for that is O. So we can use that. We could just hit the O key on the keyboard. Once again, I'm going to hold down the Shift key, which is going to constrain it to 90-degree increments. And I'm just going to keep moving my mouse around until it looks like the other half of the pattern. When it does, I'm going to release my mouse and release the keyboard shortcut. Select the Direct Select tool. Position the cursor over one of the nodes that will align with another node on this pattern piece. Click, hold down the mouse button, hold down the Shift key to keep it perfectly aligned, and you'll notice the cursor changes when it's snapped. Release the mouse, release the keyboard shortcuts. Now we really don't want the cutting machine to cut this half and then this half because it won't look right. So select both of these pattern pieces by holding down the Alt key on the keyboard and clicking and dragging. And we're going to use Pathfinder Unite to combine these two. So if you look down here, we can click to select this. And that's perfect. So let's zoom in, and we want to do the same thing with this piece. And we can see we have a little bit of a thing going on. So we're going to fix that, but first we're going to combine it. Select all of the vectors, go to Pathfinder, and click the Unite button. And to fix this, we're going to select all these little center nodes that are a little problematic, and we're going to delete them by clicking the Remove Selected Anchor Point icon. And now it's perfect. Now I like to colorize things because sometimes I work on the Cricut and sometimes I work on my Cameo Pro, so color is important. So if I click to select this, I can make it another color. So we want to change the stroke, and I'll make it this blue. The fill we always want set to nothing, which is this one right here. Okay, so that's the fill and that's the stroke. Okay, let's zoom out. And now we have that pattern piece. Let's minimize the document info panel, then expand the layers panel. If you're working on a Cricut, you can make layers for cutting, drawing, and then your information. So because I'm working on a Cricut, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to make 3 layers. I'm going to position the cursor over the first layer, double click, and change it to cutting. When I'm done typing, I'm going to press the Enter key on the keyboard. The next layer, I'm going to edit to drawing. And the top layer will be, I'm going to name it guides because that's what we're going to change those to when we bring them in. Okay, so this currently is our only draw item. So with that selected, see this little node? Those are actually the items that you have selected on this layer. To move it to the drawing layer, you're just going to put the cursor over that little icon, click, hold down the mouse button, and drag it up. Now if I hide this layer, that's disappeared. That's how I can confirm that it's on the proper layer. So I'm going to select all of the objects that are just informational and move them to the guides layer. Now if I come down to the swatches, I can also change the color of these, which will help me. So I'm going to make fill the active thing I'm changing by and you can just click on whatever you want to do. So that's stroke and this is fill. And I'm just going to change the color to red. Now's the time where I want to create the pattern pieces that are not included in the printable pattern pieces. So to do that, I'm going to go up and select the rectangle tool and then position the cursor anywhere in the document and just click and release the mouse. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to enter the exact size that we want. My pocket piece is 8 inches wide and 6 inches tall. So this shape that I just created was filled with the last color I used. An easy way to make it look like my other pattern pieces is to activate the eyedropper tool, then position the cursor over what I want it to look like and click. So that's a nice little tool to have. Go back and make my direct selection tool active. Let's label this the zip pocket. So I'm going to do an alt drag to kind of steal text from up there and bring it down. And then zoom in on the selected text. Cut to lining, fabric, not on the fold. And okay, so that takes care of one of them. And because I want to create another pattern piece, I'm just going to click to select the outside border so that when I make my next pattern piece, it's colored the right way. Go back up and get the rectangle tool, position it in an empty area, and then click and release the mouse button. And now I want to make my O-ring straps, and these are 5 inches wide by 4 inches tall. Click OK, and I'm actually using the Tab key to move from one field to the next. Let's steal this text. If you click and drag to select something and it selects something you don't want, if you hold down the Alt key and the Shift key and drag, you can deselect items. So let's hold down the Alt key and click and drag and bring this over. Let's zoom in and change the name of this one. We have this nice little drawing thing here, which is going to help us with the positioning. Let's also put that on the zip pocket. So I'm going to move these down a little bit and out of the way and create the shape for my zipper pocket. Once again, I'm going to activate the rectangle tool, position the cursor anywhere, and click. Now the width is 6 inches and the height is 3/8. Now the cool thing about Illustrator is I can just type a 3/8 and it's actually going to calculate it for me. And I'll show you. Now you could just click OK and it would happen, but if you want to see it, you can just click like that. So it does the math for you. Okay, guess what happened? So I want to color that like this. So I'm going to grab the eyedropper tool and position it over there and click. The instructions say to create the triangle that goes in 1/2 inch. So let's go back and get the rectangle tool. and then position the cursor in the workspace and click. We're going to set the width to 1/2 inch, and it remembered the height from the last time, which is great. Now we have Smart Guides turned on, so if I click just on this top node and move it down, you're going to see when it aligns perfectly with the center of the object. So when you see that pink line you want to release, I'm going to click to select the other node and delete it, and then select this line and delete it. Let's create another one while we're at it, so we're going to put that over there. Select all of the nodes, position the cursor over one of the end nodes, and drag it into position. Okay, we're going to flip this one horizontally, so I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut O, hold down the Shift key, and click and drag until it's in the right direction, and then move that into position. Select just one of the horizontal lines, copy it by using the Control-C keyboard shortcut, and then paste it by using the Control-V keyboard shortcut. And I'm going to grab it by one of the nodes and snap it. Now I'm going to grab the other side, hold down the Shift key and drag it in until it snaps to the other node. And now that is all done. You can save that in a library if you want, but you don't have to. Let's combine all of this together so that it always stays together by selecting everything, going to the Object menu, and selecting Compound Path and then Make. Now this will always stay together. With that done, we want to select it and align it to the top of the zipper pocket and move it down 1 inch. So if we look up here, X is horizontal and Y is vertical. So if I click after the inch, type a minus and then a 1 and hit the Enter key, it goes up. Okay. So if I go and click after the inch and I do plus 1, it's going to move it down 1 inch. Okay, once you do that, you want to select the outside of the pattern piece and the zipper pocket and center it horizontally. And now it's done. So the other thing we want to do is make sure that this is actually on the drawing layer.